Good morning. Today is the 8th day of second Adar, the 18th of March. We're learning Machatzit HaShekel from Derech Mitzvah Secha, and we're up to page 132 at the top. And so we started yesterday, it was actually the topic of the Chitas yesterday, the Kol and Dibur, the sound or the voice and the speech, which are two different things. And what is the idea here? We said that that there's an inner sound or inner voice, which is articulated, we call it in the heart, as it were. Not articulated, but sounded in the heart. It originates from the heart. And then it has to come out and be expressed, and that's in speech. So we saw this, the origin, one of the main origins of this is in the tabernacle, the tent of meeting. That's what we read yesterday in yesterday's Chumash. Vayikra el Moshe, vaydaber elav. So there's kriya and then dibur. And then Rashi tells us that there's a principle, that from here we learn that every time that Hashem started speaking to Moshe, first there was a call. Mm-hmm. And the call was such that it wasn't heard anywhere. It was just Moshe heard the call. No one else could hear it. And this call came from between the Krubim. And what is it? So it's an inner call. It's some kind of awakening on the inside that we're about to speak.
But he did hear something, yes? Or is that real?
It's all prophecy. But
yeah, it's okay. It's all prophecy, John.
But there's all this discussion about how far did the speech carry. Was the speech, could you hear the speech outside of the tent of meeting? Could you not hear it? And since they describe it that way in some way, what I think they mean to say is that this prophecy was so present when Moshe Rabbeinu had it, that even if somebody who was not at his level, but at some level of spirituality, happened to come into the tent of meeting at the time, he would be affected. He would hear something. I don't know if he would hear the words, but he would hear something. And here again, in his inner sense. But again, there's a call. The call is the voice, and then there's the articulation of the words, which is dibur, kol and dibur. And this becomes one of the most important metaphors in Chasidus, in order to explain various things. So here he's going to explain. This is one of the examples of he'elem v'gilui, of something being concealed and then being revealed. And we've discussed this in length in previous years, that one of the most important issues discussed by the Alter Rebbe after he came out from his second incarceration, because even though he was supposed to start teaching this after he came out from the first incarceration, he wasn't able to for whatever reason, and then it had to wait for another 2 years until he moved to Liadi. And when he moved to Liadi, one of the first things that he taught, if not the first thing, was the difference between he'elem ve'gilui and etzem ve'itpashtut, between concealment and revealment, meaning something is concealed and then it's revealed. And this pertains mostly to what we call the light, revelation, obviously. It's concealed and then revealed is related to revelation. And etzem ve'itpashtut, the thing in and of itself and its extension. And you even hear in the word extension, itpashtut, that there's some kind of affinity here to matter, even though it's not matter, it's something else. It's the thing in and of itself that is now expanding somewhere, extending somehow. And that's very different than concealment and revelation. About the tzimtzum, we say Hashem was concealed, and now he becomes revealed. That's possible. When we talk about the etzem never left. It's just always a question of extension. It's not a question of whether it's revealed or not. It's here. It's extending. It is going through some kind of extension. So one of the examples of he'elem v'gilui, of something being concealed and revealed, is voice and speech. And he says like this: Kol kalul me'esh ruach mayim. The voice, which is more internal, it's more interior, is likened to be made out of the elements fire, wind, and water. And how does that work? So I think we spoke about this. that in order to create sound, we need to have fire. Fire is the energy that they used to say comes out of the heart. The heart is hot, so it's supposed to come out of there. The wind is obvious. I mean, that's the air that we have to expend through our what's it called? But what's in here? The trachea. And the water is what keeps your voice wet. It has to lubricate the whole thing. Otherwise, it'll dry out very quickly, and you won't be able to speak. And people who have problems with the lubrication, you hear it, and their voice becomes very raspy and they can't.
Not modulated.
Right. וישנם שם, ושורשם חגת מידות שבלב. And these three, fire, wind, and water, they are likened to the three faculties of the heart, right? Loving kindness, might, and beauty. ושורשן יש גם כן בשכל. And they have an even higher source in the mind itself, in the intellect. Obviously, the chagat come from the Chabad. Because we were talking about not speech that is without any thought. It's not speech that's like just automatic speech. It's speech that a person is trying to articulate something that he thinks. So even though it's very, very quick, the whole process is meant to express something in your mind. So even though you don't feel that you're thinking it, because it's very quick, or it could be that just because we don't have too much of a ability to become aware of our thought, but as it is, when you're trying to articulate something that has meaning, then it first starts in the mind, then it goes down to the heart, then it comes out. So this is a full parable, and you can do a lot of things with it. So he's going to do a little bit of it, not too much here. וישנם שם בהתקלות כמו השכל הנוטה לאהבה. And he gives an example that there are emotive qualities in the mind also. The mind has emotive qualities. What does it mean that the mind has emotive qualities? And I can think about love. And this is a very big deal in the Tanya in chapter 17 and 18. In the Tanya, he gives a big chiddush that I don't know if anyone said it before him. He says that the very fact that you have emotional thoughts about emotions, you're not feeling anything. There's nothing going on in the chest. You're not feeling anything, but you're thinking about love. For instance, he gives a big example there, is the person is thinking about going to shul in the morning. He's thinking about it. He says, why does a person go to shul? So you could say it's really habit, it's this, it's that. If it's habit and all that, he wouldn't think about it. So if he's thinking about it, he's weighing something against something else. So for instance, he's weighing staying in bed, which he loves, with going to shul, which he also loves. He has to love shul more than he loves bed. Nobody wakes up in the morning and says, "Oh, I'm so full of love for shul." Why? Because it's an emotion in the mind. It's not like you actually feel it. So he says the very fact that you had this battle inside of you, and two things that you love had to be weighed one against the other, and you chose to go to shul, and you didn't choose to go take care of your body, do something else, rather you wanted to go running in the morning, or whatever you wanted to do, and you went to shul anyway. So that in and of itself, he says that's what the sages mean when they say machshava tova kadosh baruch hu mitzarfa lemaaseh. He says that's what's called a good thought, that God connects it as if it's an action. It says, what does it mean as if it's an action? Mitzarfa lemaaseh. He says because of the language, it's not the usual language that they would use. What it means is as if it came down to his heart, as if he actually felt it. So even though when I woke up in the morning, I didn't feel drawn to shul like some my heart, butterflies in my heart. Oh, I love shul so much. I love davening so much. I didn't feel that. What did I feel? I felt I want to go to shul despite that I'd rather stay in bed. So I have enough love for davening that it's stronger than what I do for my body. So that itself is as if you have felt it. And we know that if you don't feel it, then you haven't given birth to new emotions. So he says, even though you only thought it, it's as if you brought it down into your heart. It's as if you made it into something palpable, into something that you could sense. And then it has a completely different quality, because the whole point he says here is that the emotions in the mind be expressed in the heart. And afterwards, if they're expressed in the heart, they can be expressed in speech. And that's the whole process of davening also. That the love that I have in the morning should be expressed in the end in my talking to Hashem in davening. So
I don't know if you want to do this now or outside, but I never really thought of emotion of the mind and emotion of the heart. It was emotion to me. It's difficult. Anyway,
there's emotions in the mind.
Okay, it's just
and you see that right.
Yeah.
So that's one of his big chidushim in the Tanya. And chapter 17 and 18 are about this. Mostly chapter 18, but he also In any case, so he says now. So we have this whole. It's a whole parable. This whole thing of how speech comes out. So asechel anote le'ava. So there's an intellectual faculty here that is veering towards love. It has love in it. So there's also love included in the awakening of the mind. Again, here he's talking about the whole process that is going to come down to be felt as heat, as love in the heart, and then it will be expressed. וזהו עניין מילוי ו' שביות שהמידות והדיבור הם כלולים בשכל כעובר בבטן המלאה. So he says this is העלם וגילוי, like the child inside his mother's womb. When the child comes out, it's not an extension, it's a revelation. He was there the whole time. So we call it that this is just העלם וגילוי, it's just a concealment and revelation. It was concealed until now, and now he's revealed. So he says the same thing is true about this milui that we said Yud, that's 20 altogether because it's Yud, Vav, Dalid. And what do the Vav and the Dalid represent? So the Vav represents the emotions, and the Dalid represents the Malchus, the speech. And he says this is all included in the Yud. The Yud is the faculty of Chokhmah. But really it's not just Chokhmah. So you have to know a little bit more Kabbalah than that. So when you say Yud, a lot of times it's Abba ve'ima ila'in. It's the higher Chokhmah and Bina. It's both the wisdom and the understanding together. And they include in them already the emotions and the speech even the expression. Everything is in that first Yud. The whole process. שביוד שהמידות והדיבור הם כלולים בשכל כעובר בבטן המלאה, וכשיוצאים ונמשכים בגילוי להיות דבר בפני עצמו, אזי נעשים מידות ודיבור בפועל, ואז הם ו' מיוחדים בפני עצמם ולא אותן שבמילוי יוד. And when they do come out, the vav and the dalid out of the yud, when they are expressed, they become something independent. Meaning, that's what we feel. We don't feel that our speech is a direct revelation of our mind. Once we begin speaking, it sounds like it's something that just stands on its own, like it's not, and especially when someone else hears it, and especially today when you can tape it, and the whole thing just becomes something completely separate from the person that spoke it, as opposed to what could be the other option. The other option is that when God says He spoke and He created the world, if that speech would be completely detached, independent from Him, then the world wouldn't need Him. It would just stand by itself. But it says, Dvarcha Hashem nitzav b'shamayim. It's your words, God stand in the heavens to hold the heavens, to create them. They have to continue to be God's speech. So it's like it's always emanating from Him. It's not something that happened just once. Still, there is an aspect to the speech that it's not the same thing as His thought. That if the Torah would have said God thought, then that would be that He and the world are the same thing. There wouldn't be any, you wouldn't see any difference, because again, when the child is already comes out, he becomes completely independent. It seems like there's no connection to the parents, but there still is. So, ואז הם ו"ד מיוחדים בפני עצמם, ולא אותן שבמילוי יוד. והנה, היוד עצמו, זולת ו"ד הכלואים בו, הוא עצמיות החוכמה. The yud by itself, without the ו"ד, is what we call the essence of wisdom. מה שהיא במהותה ועצמותה, זולת מה שכוללת את שלמטה ממנה. והיא נקראת אבנה למשקל בית ו"ד. And it says, and it's separate in such a sense that it stands independently, and that's why the Zohar calls it a stone with which you weigh. And what are you going to weigh? You're going to weigh the Vav Dalet, meaning that they're like separate, he wants to say. There's the wisdom, and it's true that it includes, in a hidden way, in a concealed way, it includes the emotive faculties and the speech. But we're going to treat it now as just something separate, just the Yud, the first Yud of Yud Vav Daled, that stands by itself, it's a weight by itself, and the Vav Daled is now something that's going to be separate. So he's taking them apart. So that's what the Zohar is saying, that you have 20 Gerah, and it divides into Yud and to Vav Daled, 10 and 10. Okay. שהיו בעיבור והתקלות בה. כי הנה ידוע, השבירה שהייתה בעולם אותו הוא רק בבחינת זת, שאין המידות הנקראים ו"ד כנ"ל. אבל בגר לא הייתה השבירה, כי דכתיב ימותו ולא בחוכמה. ולכן עצמיות החוכמה, שהיות פשוטה, היא אבנה למשקל בה. ו"ד, כלומר שהיא המבררת הניצוצות שנפלו מזת הנעל, הנקרא ו"ד, שזהו כמשל האבן ששוקלים בו, וכשמניחים אותו על כף אחד, מכפי המשקולת היא מכרעת כנגדה את הסחורה המונחת למטה בארץ בכף שכנגדה ומרבעת אותם למעלה. Okay, so now what is this all good for? Because we said that the point of the wisdom, if you remember 3 weeks ago before we stopped, we were talking about that there are Chasadim, 5 aspects of loving kindness that come from the wisdom, and then they're transferred down to Za and to Malchus, and to his feminine counterpart. Za and his feminine counterpart are Vav Dalet here. Okay, that's the translation that we haven't said yet. So everything that we talked about before, that Za has to receive his mind from Ima and the Chasadim from Abba, all that is talking about what we call emotive faculties. That's the Vav in Yud Vav Dalet. The Dalet is his feminine counterpart. Okay? So we have those two. The Yud remains the Chokhmah in and of itself, the wisdom in and of itself, where the source of these 5 aspects of loving kindness are going to come from. What is this? It says, what is this like? He says, this is like the description of creation according to the Arizal. And instead of creation, we'll call it a description of emanation after we had our whole discussion last week. What does the Arizal say? He says that there was a shattering of the vessels. Where was the shattering of the vessels? Only in the Vav Daled. Meaning, the world of chaos is like a full gamut of all the Sfirot. And because of whatever reason, it shatters. But only the 7 bottom Sfirot shatter, meaning from Dat and down. He asked me, how do you have 7 from Dat and down? I count 8, because Dat, Chesed, Gvura, Tiferet, Netzach, Hod, Yesod, Malchut. That's 8. It's not 7, so why do you call it the bottom 7? Because Netzach and Hod, the simplest explanation is Netzach and Hod in the world of chaos are one thing. Okay? In our world, Netzach and Hod are separate, but there they were, for whatever reason, they were one thing. So you had only 7. So those shattered and they broke. So the Vav Daled shattered. But the Yud, Chokhmah, nothing happened to it. It's not exactly true, and the Tanya explains that the Yud had a blemish, and something happened to Chokhmah. It wasn't that it came out completely scot-free, but in all, it stayed how it was. And then it says, Bechokhmah idbariru, that those, the emotions, the Vav, and the speech, the feminine counterpart, the Dalit, that are now shattered because of the shattering of the vessels in the world of chaos, are now rectified, they're fixed by the Yud, by Chokhmah. That's called Bechokhmah idbariru. They will be, really it's refined, they'll become better through wisdom. What does wisdom do? So the simplest thing is, when you have a child, and he doesn't have wisdom yet, he doesn't have bittul. So somebody says something to him that's terrible. He can't stand what it was said to him. His emotions run crazy. He needs some older person to come and tell him, look, calm down. Ignore it. That ignore it comes from loving kindness. It comes from the wisdom. The wisdom has bittul. It has a power of nullification. So the adult doesn't see it the same way. I mean, he understands why you would be hurt by it, but in the end he says it's not worth getting angry about. Why? Because it's not worth it. So he tries to transfer that's the role the wisdom plays in our mind also. So I'm the child, my heart is always the child, and my speech is definitely without any connection to what I think, and I would just run my mouth off in retaliation to anything somebody would tell me. He says, no, wait a minute, you have a yud also, you have a wisdom also. The wisdom is meant to rectify this. So now, taking this parable and putting it on our scales parable, so the wisdom is the yud on the right side. The vav dalid is there's 10 and 10 here. And what you do is that the 10 are supposed to lift whatever you have on the left side. You would say they're equal. This says 10 and this is 10. So it's not exactly, because we always have, he's not saying this, but we always have la'achriya. We always have that you have to give more on the side of the weight so that the person who's buying should get a little bit more than what he had. So it says even though they seem to be equal, they're not really equal. All the more so if your vav and dalet are very light, you don't have very strong emotions. So the yud on this side, the avna, the weight that you put here lifts your emotions and your speech. And that is rectification. That's what's happening here. That's the Machatzit HaShekel. So which Machatzit HaShekel are we giving? The right side. The right side is pushing the scales down and elevating our emotions and our speech. So that's it for today. So we're putting all these things together. We're starting to put them together. Hopefully we'll get more and more together as it goes on.